And we are back. Thanks for that mellow music there,
It's like kind of a mellow, snowy,
It is.
not too cold day.
Nope, not too cold at all. Wait to snow.
And we got a
wait
big
to shovel.
crowd here eating all this food, drinking all this good coffee here at the Heartland Cafe. We want to thank Tom Rosenfeld and the Heartland Cafe for being our home for Live from the Heartland.
For all these years. All right, Campaign for Better Illinois, Kristen Crowell is here. Welcome to Live from the Heartland, Kristen.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you.
I got to say that there are two people with the same extension that you gave me when I called looking for you yesterday. Some guy answered the phone, so I went back to the switchboard and I got 206.
And it didn't go through either?
This is fascinating radio,
okay, so
Michael.
Take it away, Kate. Ask a question.
All right, Kristen, what is Campaign for Better Illinois?
Well, the Campaign for a Better Illinois is a coalition of over 180 organizations from all over the state that have come together to work specifically to amend our Constitution to get rid of this mandated flat tax, this regressive tax that we live with.
That we're suffering under.
And in order to create a fair tax structure that would provide adequate revenue for our priorities, a pathway out of the chronic debt and budget crisis that we face, and for one of the core priorities for us, fairness. So
right.
If you make a lower income, you're going to pay a lower rate. And if you make a higher income, we're going to ask you to pay a higher rate. And this is, we believe, fundamental to setting our state back on track.
So there are 9 states that have a flat tax.
That's true.
That means that everybody from at whatever rung in society you're on in the economic ladder, you pay the same rate. As opposed to a progressive tax where the wealthier pay a higher rate.
It's true, and I think one of the myths about what a flat tax is this notion that everybody pays the same rate. Because effectively,
right.
which is the most important
right.
thing, what people
right.
actually pay is not the same. And so if you are a middle-class person or a poor person in this state paying 5%, it is actually 2 to 3 times out of your pocketbook what someone at the higher end of the spectrum
That's right.
makes.
Does that take into account that the people at the higher level have better or accountants that can get a lot of deals made so that they don't have to pay tax?
Absolutely, that at the higher
loopholes?
end there's incentives and there are ways around paying some of that income tax. And so, we believe this is about a campaign for fairness, but also about funding these things that have been cut and cut and cut, like education and healthcare and public safety.
So the tax that's about to expire, the tax hike that's about to expire in 15, right? 2015
Yes.
is the impetus for doing this work right now, right?
Well, we
Or
really
helps.
are at a moment that something has to be done.
Something has to
There
happen.
is not, and all of our elected officials, some of them I'm sure would prefer not to have to deal with this because they're all running for election. However,
Well, we saw how willingly...
They don't want to talk about it till after the election.
We saw how willingly they dealt with pension reform.
Well, that's part of it. Every time the pension issue comes up, I will ask state representatives, state senators. I've asked
What
even
will you
Sheila
ask them,
Simon. I
Michael?
would ask them, what about a progressive income tax
Right.
as a way to really solve this problem? And while some people will say, yeah, well, that's something we want to do, but we can't do it till after the election, some people, Sheila Simon would say at a meeting, she said, well, that's only part of it. And I was blown away because everyone in the audience would have been cheering her on for a progressive income tax in the state.
So the other thing that I read in doing...
So I'm just saying they don't want to touch it. A lot of the politicians. You think that's going to change?
well, we're going to talk. Let's talk about that because I think
Yes,
when I started doing this work about 6 months ago, everywhere I went, people were like, "This is really great. No chance. How are you going to get this passed out of the legislature?"
Right.
And what this campaign has done over this last 6 months is really build a grassroots movement to communicate directly with these elected officials and say, we actually need you to do this.
Time is now.
There is no option. When you look at polling, which they care deeply about, not only is this the right thing to do fiscally, but it's the most politically popular thing if you're an elected official to move the state forward.
What are you doing here on Monday night, then? There's an event here.
We have an event here on February 10th that the
week
IVI
from Monday, sorry.
IPO is putting on, and it's to talk about a fair tax structure. And I think they've got Ralph Martiri coming in,
Oh, Ralph, great.
as well as
That's
Peter
excellent.
Starzinski.
That's right.
So are these people you're working closely with?
You know, Peter is wonderful. He's our outreach political director, and actually he's been doing this work for well
Forever.
over a year, laying the groundwork for the rest of the campaign to emerge. But we've been having campaign meetings and campaign kickoffs all over the state. We'll also be in the Quad Cities next week, where we've got about 50 active folks coming out to move the ball in that region. We were in Kankakee this week. We'll be in Joliet coming up. So we're really taking this message outside everywhere in the state, and
Excellent.
not just having meetings, but doing deep organizing behind that. So phone banking, door knocking,
This is
petition
pretty
gathering.
exciting.
I have yet, though, to see, whether it's watching Channel 11 or any of the other TV stations, much talk about a progressive income tax. Do you feel like, is there a media campaign, too, going along with this? Are you reaching out to people to get on the air and spread the word?
We are. I think what we're seeing is that as this debate heats up, that we've been intentionally working to lay the groundwork, and there is a earned media and intentional media plan strategy for how do we get the word out in the most strategic and effective way.
Is the do you think that the pension bills that were passed will hold up in court? And then the follow-up to that would be, how do you tie yourself and promote the fair tax issue off of the pension issue?
Oh, it's interesting. So first of all, I would say our coalition runs the gamut from everyone who wanted folks to vote for the bill and wanted folks to vote against the bill.
Really?
It's a very interesting issue for our coalition that, despite divide internally on that issue, we've maintained that regardless of whatever the fiscal crisis, whether it be pensions or unfunded health care or underfunded higher ed, that's what's keeping us together. And so I would say for some of the folks in our coalition, yes, they're going to continue to work on pensions. Personally, I think it probably won't. I'm not a lawyer. This is just my gut sense. I don't think it's going to hold up in court.
Yeah.
Even though that some of the worst politicians helped appoint some of the Supreme Court judges.
That's true, Michael. That's really true.
No, I
It's
hope
still
that they
the
go
court.
beyond that.
And the unions have good lawyers. I mean, I saw him talking in Chicago the other night. Pretty
Yeah, he
confident.
was good.
Yeah, but I would argue that for anyone who wants to say that the progressive income tax or the fair tax is about pension debt, that's not what this is about.
Right.
This is about a 34-year-old chronic problem that pits, the burden of taxes effectively on lower income folks. We've got massive underfunded priorities, and no one's putting any solutions on the table other than this.
And plus, Speaker of the House Madigan is pushing for corporate tax relief as well at the same time. He's pushing to lower.
Yeah, I haven't heard him come out for a progressive income tax, does he? I mean,
I don't know. Does
do you
he?
have any Republicans who are for a progressive income tax?
So we've been traveling the state and doing visits, and I will tell you that I think there is interest in some of these Republican districts when you just look at how economically this would impact the local municipalities. For example, I was out in Galesburg. They're set to eliminate 12 firefighter positions if they can't figure out how to generate more revenue.
Money. Mm-hmm.
And the temporary income tax that was passed in 2011 does begin to sunset. And what that did, which was, I think, important, was start to pay down the state's debt.
Right.
But none of the money that was raised in the temporary income tax flowed to the local municipalities. And so when we're looking at what we're proposing, money going to the locals is very important, and it's key to helping make sure that the safety nets at the local levels are supported, that there are fire trucks and firefighters and public safety, that this is not just to pay down the debt, it's how do we move the ball forward? How do we get this state on a path where we're solving the issues and providing adequate resources for our communities.
What's the website that people should be looking at to get information about what we're talking
So
about?
we'd invite you to go to www.abetterillinois.org. We have an online petition that if you would like to make your voice heard and encourage this General Assembly to pass this legislation, please sign the petition. That will put you on our email list. I promise we don't fundraise off this email. This is we don't yet anyway, but this is a this is
We all
an
know how to
information.
discard.
So what is that website?
It's www.abetterillinois.org.
We're talking to Kristen Crowell of the Campaign for a Better Illinois. We're talking about a fairer tax structure in Illinois. Hopefully we'll move Illinois out of an unfair tax to the citizens column into one that is fair to the citizens.
And we want to make sure people know about the forum that you guys have put together for a week from Monday. That'll happen here at the Heartland at 8:30 or 7:30, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. But come
Monday.
early so you can get all seated and get some food and drink and get ready for Ralph Martiri and
Ralph
Peter
Martiri is
Starzinski.
like one of the best. He's really one of the best activists
He's,
forever
the
in
executive
Illinois.
director of the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability.
Yeah.
All right, I would like to ask you, Kristen, in traveling around the state, what do you see? What is life like? Are things rougher for people? I mean, I had a chance to come up from Nashville on the eastern side in the last year, as well as going down and even going through Cairo on my way to Texas and South by Southwest. And, you know, I see some towns that seem to be really together. I saw some towns that are really on, you know, on the skids. And what's your sense of the state? I know that the governor, and I confess I'm rooting for this governor as opposed to having a Republican in office, but he says Illinois has turned it around. Any sense of where we're going in the state?
So I would say it depends on where you're at. And like everything else, I think there is a wide income gap disparity that affects the local communities, and those that are struggling that can't pass a local property tax referendum go without less. And there are, you know, the jobs, I mean, let's be honest, there's still a jobs problem in the state.
Big time.
And to pretend that's not happening isn't reality. And so I think it really depends on where you're at. And if you go, you know, you go out to the suburban, life looks pretty good, and your schools are well funded, and you know, you go to the smaller communities and they're on the edge, and they need some help, and they need some stability in order to plan for how do they balance their budget, how do they keep jobs in their communities, how do they support local small businesses.
Yeah, you know, and when I read a line like I did last night from researching for this, that the fate of the tax rate hike is of concern to the Wall Street credit rating agencies, I just want to scream. I mean, who's rating the Wall Street agencies? And who cares what they think of our, I mean, you know, this is a simplistic, I understand, response, but still, Wall Street, who has never paid for their sins of 5 years ago on our economy and is still doing it. Yeah, well, I mean, let's go further, but and they are judging us who are struggling in any state that is out here struggling against what they have done to stay afloat. It's confusing.
Well, I think it's really clear that this is a fight against big corporations and rich folks who want to take advantage of the rest
Everybody
of
else.
us. And they're a well-funded special interest group, not here from Illinois. They're from out of state. There's out-of-state billionaires right now putting money into this state to try to sink our effort to create a fair tax. And money was moved into the state even a year ago to poison the atmosphere about a progressive tax.
Where does that money go to poison the atmosphere?
Well, it goes to different organizations. I mean, Americans for Prosperity is one, a Koch-funded organization to make sure that they're out organizing.
Koch brothers, not the drug.
Koch brothers.
Or the soda.
You know, two others that I would name is Illinois Policy Institute is paid to commission reports that are inaccurate.
I'm wondering how I got on their mailing list, but it is kind of interesting to sneak into the world.
It's important to know what they're saying.
Exactly.
It's very important to know what they're saying, and it's important to debunk it.
But it sort of freaks me out.
Absolutely. And just recently, the Tax Foundation folks were here with a big press conference in Chicago and a bunch of Republican lawmakers. Our research dug in and found out that their expert report was written by a kid who was 21 years old and just graduated from Transylvania College. Like
Transylvania?
Pennsylvania.
That's a real college.
There is a well-organized, concerted effort by the right, and we, the people who care about our state and the future of our state, have to stand up to fight for this and to fight back against, what we're seeing not just here in Illinois, but all over the Midwest.
Kristen Crowell, one of the things I like to ask the younger activists is what moves you? Where did you come from? Where did you grow up? How did you get involved? And
You beat me to it.
what kind of inspires you to do the good work that you do?
So candidly,
That's
there's
what
a
we
couple.
like.
There's a couple key things. One, I grew up on a Christmas tree farm in rural Wisconsin.
Yay!
And my parents
New
were.
source for Christmas trees for the Heartland.
And so, we depending on how the year was, if people could afford to spend money on Christmas trees, we
Right.
survived. And when the economy was poor, it was a struggle.
Which part of Wisconsin?
I grew up in Marshfield.
Is that the driftless region?
It's in the dead center, so
Oh,
a lot
okay.
of granite.
All right.
Smack dab in the middle.
Got it.
But the big thing really was I went to school. I always thought I would be a teacher.
You are.
And thank you. I appreciate that. And I was a special ed teacher in the Milwaukee Public Schools.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to UW Milwaukee.
Uh-huh.
I was at St. Norbert College, which is a small college, and
Catholic.
then transferred to UW Milwaukee. But what that experience did was just piss me off.
Yeah.
Candidly.
Yeah.
Made me furious.
And we can use that word on the air these days.
hope so.
I've heard other people do it on big time
And-
TV.
And then and I'm also a mother of 4 kids.
You are.
I have an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, my 6-year-old's in the audience, and
I
a
thought you were
5-year-old.
about 18. That's why I was calling you a young
You're
activist.
so sweet. But when they started going to school, that's
my
when it
gosh.
got real serious and real personal. And the first act of political activity I did, and I was a moron, I had no idea what I was doing, but I ran for the Milwaukee Public School Board when I was 24.
Don't call yourself
Nice.
a
Well, I
moron.
mean,
That's
what did
excellent.
I know? What did I know?
Enough to run.
Enough to be a loudmouth. And, many, many years later, the fight, we're fighting the same fight over and over and
That's
over.
so true.
And it's just,
So you're working in Illinois. You're working
Yes.
with this campaign. You also did some campaign work up in Wisconsin. How about sharing a little bit on that?
well, I
'Cause
think,
I know there are people up in Wisconsin listening to the show, and we do like Wisconsin despite some political stuff going on up there.
well, I had the great privilege for the last 3 years of serving as the executive director of We Are Wisconsin, which was the labor community coalition that grew out of the massive uprisings. And if ever there is a moment to give a warning to Illinois to what the Bruce Rowners and the Koch brothers can do, and if anyone thinks it's not possible, I just challenge you to look to our neighbors. Living
I'd
through
throw
that,
Rom in there, working with Rounder too. Go ahead.
watching that happen before your very eyes, where hundreds of thousands of people are saying, no, this isn't what you want.
And they do it anyway.
We had moderate Republicans saying, we don't want this. They didn't want to take away collective bargain rights. These were moderate Republicans who had been with the labor movement for decades. And big money came in and forced their hand, and that's what we got in Wisconsin. And so I know there's a movement still there that's fighting, that's working to, silence Scott Walker and end that, end his reign. But it's tough. It is tough when you are outspent in every campaign.
and when you have to
5,
work
6
for a
to
living.
1.
A lot
in
of people
between.
think that, what's the point where, people get down. They don't believe in, they don't see the long-range results of action,
Well,
because
I don't
any
blame 'em.
campaign, you start with a small group. And then at some time, the tide shifts. And, there's like a more of a mass force behind
Yeah,
the
but what I
cause.
hear Kristen saying right now is they had the masses in Wisconsin.
Well, they did.
And they still got run over by money and power and ignoring the masses. So that is scary.
Let's hope on the next wave it
That
comes
is
around.
Pretty darn scary.
Okay, tell us one more time. Tell us one more time about the unfair tax structure in Illinois,
Well-
the campaign to have a fair tax structure, and the kind of groups that are involved, and where you go when you leave here.
In
So-
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So first I would say, I realize that when someone says, let's have a tax policy conversation, that is not the most sexy, exciting, passionate thing to have. I would challenge all of us who do care deeply about the fair tax
Fairness.
and changing the structure and getting our state back on track, is that we've got to be out talking to our friends, family, and neighbors from a passionate gut level. This has got to be personal. People need to understand that there is something to be done to solve our problems, and we have to take some ownership in this issue, become educated, We have 100 days to pass 2 bills out of the General Assembly to refer this issue to the ballot. So right now, this is about getting the Senate and the House to take this issue up. We are making very good progress. We've got 39 co-sponsors in the House, 26 in the Senate.
Oh, that's good.
And we're gaining a lot of momentum. So everyone that's listening, call your senator,
Call your
your state rep, and ask them to put this on the bill or
I
on
know
the
our
ballot.
senators
No.
and our rep is listening in, so
Listen,
take note.
What are they telling them to be specific? Say
So there
support.
are the Fair Tax Act, which
Fair Tax
Senator Don Harmon is the co-sponsor.
Okay.
They're, we're asking you to sign on to this piece of legislation. We need to pass this by May 4th in order to put this on the ballot. All this piece of legislation says is we're looking to amend the Constitution to allow for a tax, a fair tax, where lower rates apply to lower incomes and higher rates apply to higher incomes. It just allows the process to change. And so this is easy. This is an easy vote. Politically, we're letting the people have a voice. It is the most...
Take note, all you elected reps that we're in contact with.
In all of our polling and research and focus groups and meetings on the ground, the general public 2-to-1 prefers a fair tax over letting the temporary expire or making the temporary permanent. That is not the way to go. This is the path forward.
Kristen Crowell, betterillinois.org. We're looking for a Fair Tax Act, and we're contacting all of our elected officials.
And on
You're going
Monday-
to come back, aren't you?
I will come back anytime. This
You
has
got
been a
it,
wonderful
babe.
morning.
And
You
there is
got
an
it.
event on fair taxes here at the Heartland on Monday the 10th.
Right, 7 p.m. And we are live from the Heartland, signing off. Let's hear it for Kristen Crowell and all the people working hard for a fair tax system here in Illinois. So.
And I would like to thank all the people who make this show possible, all the people listening in. We encourage you to do good.